evening, Andy. Hope everything's well with you. I'm just playing with the Dewberry here. Oh, excellent to hear that all's good. Boy, it's great fun to play, but it's a hard blow. It has to be said. Well, just blow my nose here. Absolutely no indication of comment. I must say, just blowing my nose because it's winter. Pete, good evening, Pete. Got me there in mid-nose blow. So, well, here we are. A couple of people here. Hopefully some more rolling in at some point. It's all go. It's all go here. I've got lots of things prepared, sort of, in a way. Hi, Debbie. Hope everything's okay for you. I would say Happy New Year, but I'm actually not very much in the habit of saying Happy New Year. I'm much more likely to say Happy January and then send people cards at the end of March. I'm going to talk a little bit about the reason for that in a little while. Might start off with a bit of music before that to give people time to get here. Otherwise, the historical narrative will all have to be repeated, which might take quite a long time. So, forgive me, I'm just going to tootle a bit more on the Dewberry for the time being. The Dewberry is one of the nice things to have happened in 2020. It was turned up in a flash sale by the Early Music Shop based in Saltaire over in Yorkshire, and they were offering it for an extremely good price, much less than they normally would, in kit form, which meant that it had to have the holes drilled in it, the finger holes and everything. It arrived, it was lovely. I looked at it and went, there's no way that I have the technical skill to put these holes in the right place. Luckily, my good friend Malcolm, living around the corner, was up for that kind of thing. He has all kinds of fascinating technical skills. He'd never tried a musical instrument before, so he very kindly took on the task of drilling the holes and did a terrific job. So this thing is now working really nicely, and it's my first Windcap musical instrument. I've wanted one of the, well, it's my second actually. The Mighty Cromwell one was the first, but I've wanted lots of these things for years, so it's just nice to get another one, and this one at an alto pitch. Whoops, put my fingers in the right place. Really have a D sharp, so I had to fudge that ending. A little bit of Renaissance style improvisation. So yeah, New Year. I mean, Happy New Year to everybody who's here, and I hope you've been having a good one. But is it really the New Year? Let's look a little bit at calendars for a start. The Julian calendar, named after Julius Caesar because he introduced it in Rome in 45 BC, was the principal calendar right the way through the Middle Ages, right through the Roman Empire, up into the 16th century. And it had a slight problem. It had been calculated by it's believed, various Greek astronomers and mathematicians, but they hadn't quite got their calculations and measurements accurate. So there was a bit of a drift of the calendar against the solar calendar. This is where it gets all very mathematically complicated, and I don't really understand it, but apparently roughly every 128 years the calendar was out by the actual solar calendar by approximately 1 day. So over time the calendar got further and further away from what was actually happening in nature, until you got to the 16th century, by which time it was about 9 or 10 days out of whack, and a new system was introduced. By then Galileo had invented the telescope. You had all kinds of different methods of calculating the movement of the stars and the movement around the sun, even if you weren't allowed to admit that it was movement around the sun, because everything was supposed to be revolving around the Earth at that point. But a new calendar was devised and introduced in a papal bull by one of the Pope Gregories, not sure which, 13th or 15th possibly. Anyway, in 1582, and it was quickly adopted by most of the European countries. However, it wasn't adopted by England. For fairly obvious reasons. In 1582, England was sitting there being an island regarding the entire European mainland as a hotbed of Catholic opposition. The Europeans were the enemies. The Pope was the arch enemy, and it was highly unlikely that the English were going to take any notice of anything that the Pope suggested. So everybody else adopted a more accurate calendar. The English kept up with the Julian calendar, as did various other places. Turkey kept up with the Julian calendar apparently until about 1927, by which time they were well over 2 weeks out of whack with the rest of the Western world. So we have this situation whereby in England you're measuring. If you were to cross the Channel to England, you'd find that you were several days out in your calculation. Furthermore, there's the question of the date of the new year. Now, the Julian calendar sort of established the 1st of January as the start of the year, but during the Middle Ages there was a certain amount of change to pin the new year to more specifically Christian festivals, and in England it was pinned to Easter, to be precise Lady Day, which was the 25th of March. So the 25th of March was the last day of the year, and 26th of March was the first day of the year. This leads to all kinds of complications once everybody else has adopted the Gregorian calendar and is measuring from the 1st of March, from the 1st of January. Sorry, it does get very complicated, this. For example, the execution of King Charles I, who was executed on the 30th of January. And according to the English calendar of the time, that was the 30th of January 1648. But once you start measuring by the Gregorian calendar, it's actually the 30th of January 1649, because the adoption of the Gregorian calendar by the English also involved definitively shifting the new year back to January the 1st. And when I say definitively, I don't actually mean that, because of course the financial year has stayed where it was, which is why your tax year runs from early April to early April instead of January to January. That remained in place. We'll get round to the reasons for that in a moment. First, I'm going to have a sip from today's drinking receptacle, which is it's the very small England cup. I'm not going to say any more about that. I'm just going to leave it there. It's the very small England cup. I hope it's got enough to get me through this. Let's do some music. I've lined up lots and lots of different pieces of music which have something or other to do with time. And since I'm talking about calendars, let's pick out just about the only song that I could actually think of that has calendars involved. It's not a particularly popular subject for songs. So giving it a moment for the necessary 10-second gap at the start of the karaoke track. Let's see what we can do with this. This is Calendar Girl by Neil Sedaka. Oh, try and get the key. Oh, there we go. Get rid of that so I can see what I'm doing. Neil Sedaka with Calendar Girl and quite a lot of fumbling around at the start. Quick look. Oh, there are people here. Ricky! Evening, mate. I'm feeling okay. Awful smell of eggs around the place, but apart from that, yeah, it's all good. I've eaten a dozen eggs in the last 6 days, and I'm about egged out. But otherwise, yeah, good. Ah! Rupert, you turned up at 7 o'clock. Oh, well, here we are. Chris, Cobbler Bob, there's a hole in my soul. Hugh's here. Hi, Hugh. 8-bit on the old gaming systems. Yeah. Caroline, thank you for telling me the Cornish pasties were delicious. Ricky, I don't even know what 8-bit is. Pete, Boris is still using the Julian calendar. Yes, he's not great on timing, is he? Right. Debbie, isn't it a fantastic cardie? Let's just have a bit more of a look at this thing. Isn't it wonderful? Ah, I love it. Made by my good friend Lainey. It was one of the good things of 2020, definitely. It was a Christmas present at 2019, and I'm loving it. Loving it. It's warm, it's toasty, it's very bright and colourful. It's a fantastic piece of kit. Do you really want to see my face? If I were you, I might keep this tip down because then you'll see more of the cardie, which is great. Right, so Neil Sedaka, Calendar Girl, where were we? Right, one of the great things about 2020 for me was finally, after many, many years of really liking and really wanting to get something like this, I acquired a genuine William Hogarth print. Now, Hogarth was the great satirical cartoonist of the 18th century and one of the first great English artists. In actual fact, English art didn't really have much cachet at all, or many great practitioners before Hogarth came along, and he put a lot of work into not only selling and marketing his own work, but to pushing the idea of English art and English artists. Psychedelic Cardi indeed, Andy. And his print, his work, very detailed. The print work is absolutely extraordinary, all kinds of depths and qualities to it. I love his work. About 20 years ago, I saw something on eBay. I saw a copy of his Strolling Actresses Dressing in a Barn print, and I was not sure. I was umming and ahhing. It was trimmed down like mad, so you couldn't see any of the originals around, and I wasn't sure from the photographs whether it was a real item or not. So I missed it. And ever since then, for the last 20 years, I've dipped into eBay occasionally, had a look. This year, up came this print, and I looked at it, and I looked at it carefully. Again, the photographs weren't great. Clearly the seller wasn't really up on his history on these kind of things. Looking at his other items, he was a guy selling antique furniture. Quite possibly he bought the print in a frame, taken it out of the frame, sold the frame, and then realised that maybe he could sell the print for something as well. And he'd looked around a bit, he'd done a bit of research, and he'd priced it at about the level that eBay is asking for the 1822 Hogarth prints. This is 60 years after Hogarth died, and the last prints run off from his original plates before they completely wore out. But it isn't an 1822. I looked at this and there are various clues that I was able to spot, specifically one word being very prominently misspelled, which indicated that this was one of the original 600 run of prints produced in the year 1750. So I put in my bid, and nobody else bid, and I got it, and it arrived. And I've had it framed, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to have. Wonderful thing to have. Probably the only artistic original I will ever have, but by a favourite artist, a tremendous, detailed, exhilarating piece of work. It's great. I'm so glad to have it. It ties in with the calendar and the time theme because down in the bottom left-hand corner there's an inscription saying, published on January the 31st, 1750, which by modern standards you'd think, why would you publish something on New Year's Eve? Have you had enough of the Cardi yet? I've had enough of it. I want to see my face, see what I'm looking like. Pure narcissism, I'm afraid. I'm turning into Boris Johnson. Why would you publish something on New Year's Day? And the answer is, in 1750, it wasn't New Year's Day. New Year's Day was still March the 25th. January the 31st was a bit of a holiday, but it was only the end of the month. This didn't change until 1752. Can you only see my nostrils? Is that better? Right, okay. It's deeply uncomfortable though, so I might pull back a bit. Right, okay, back to the Cardi and back to the nostrils. It's because I'm looking up at the picture instead of looking down at the camera. That's why. I need to get a better positioned camera or a better positioned screen or something. Maybe in 2021 it'll happen. So there we are, January the 31st, 1750, not the end of the year. 3 months ago until the end of the year. And this all changed in 1752. And the reason for it really was, by 1752, the country was more or less governed by the Whig faction. And we'll talk about Tories and Whigs in a moment. But the Whigs dominated British politics in the first half of the 18th century, and the Whig persuasion was mostly made up of businessmen, landowners, magnates. It was largely concerned with trade. So the reason for changing the calendar was to regularise trade procedures with Europe and stop this. And the reason for shifting the new year back to January was pretty much the same thing. You really think I'll get a cameraman towards the end of the year, Andy? I like your optimism. I think it's more likely that I'll probably buy another camera that I can clip onto the side of the screen and use that instead of the not very good built-in thing on the laptop. So, yeah, the new year was moved back to January the 31st as of 1752 for trade reasons, basically, to do this. Partly so that you get all the partying of the new year over with in one go, Christmas and New Year all in a week, everybody get drunk and then get back to business, but largely to standardise trade with Europe, all oddly contemporary when you think about it. Right, okay, more music. I've lined up a number of things that are roughly associated with time, some of which I've practiced, some of which I haven't. Let's see what we've got. Okay, before I lose my voice, I'm going to try singing. Let's do this one. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. I wanna fly like an eagle to the sea. Fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I wanna fly like an eagle until I'm free. Lord, through the revolution, feed the babies who don't have enough to eat. Shoes the children with no shoes on their feet. How's the people are living in the street? Oh, there's a solution. I want to fly like an eagle to the sea. Fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an eagle until I'm free. Fly through the revolution. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Time keeps on slipping, slipping, slipping into the future. Okay, it says tdd.cum.up. tdd.cum. I don't really buy them. I want to fly like an eagle, that's better, to the sea. Fly like an eagle, let my spirit carry me. I want to fly like an eagle until I'm free. Fly through the revolution. Okay, Fly Like an Eagle by the Steve Miller Band from 1976, if I remember correctly. Might have been 1975. If it is, somebody correct me. Right. Okay, that was quite fun. Right, where was I? 2025. The Steve Miliband, no relation to Ed. Yes, indeed. Oh, thank you, Hugh. Yeah. The Steve Miliband, the Ed Miliband, the all sorts of Milibands. Rupert, you watched the whole gig with Steve Miller on stage and didn't know it was him. I always think of the story of Miles Davis opening for Steve Miller at the Fillmore. Was it the Fillmore West, Hugh? In April 1970, I think it was. And there were 3 gigs, 3 nights with Miles Davis as opening act and the Steve Miller Band as the main act. And basically, for the last gig, Miles just didn't turn up. So Bill Graham put Steve Miller on. And Miles went on as the main act instead after the Steve Miller Band. And Bill Graham afterwards said, what are you doing, disrespecting Steve Miller? And Miles, in his inimitable growl, which I'm not going to imitate because it was inimitable, said something along the effect of, I'm Miles Davis. I'm not going on to support some sorry ass white boy blues band. Which, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of affection for the Steve Miller Band. I like a lot of those records. Some of them weren't great. Oh, he was playing with Little Axe Incognito. Of course, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't look at him. Not the kind of guy you'd look at and go, "That's distinctively Steve Miller. I can recognise him on the spot." The sort of guy who would blend into the background. Anyway, there we are. Steve Miller. I like some of those records. Fly Like an Eagle is an old favourite from the time. Bought that from a guy on the Isle of Man, living on a campsite at Peel at the Isle of Man in the summer of 1976, and I bought a stack of albums, dirt cheap, from this guy who was basically just selling off his stuff to make some money. I also got Faithful by Todd Rundgren and a slightly battered copy of Roxy and Elsewhere by Frank Zappa and the Mothers, all for less than a fiver, which was really quite a heck of a bargain. Fiddling around with the match here for no apparent reason. Another drink from the very Little England cup. So, Tories and Whigs. The calendar change in 1752 was sponsored by the Whig faction, which was largely in control of British government for most of the first 3 quarters, in fact, of the 18th century. Now, in those days, you didn't have what we think of as political parties. It wasn't a party system. In fact, you didn't necessarily have anything other than the Whigs. Some people call him the gangster of love, indeed. He's a joker, I believe. The Tories, nominally at that point, didn't really exist. And it's always worth mentioning, I find it always worth mentioning when talking about the Tories, that the name Tory derives from the Irish word for outlaw or robber. And it was an insult, essentially. The original Tories were the die-hard the royalists, essentially, who, after 1660, formed a faction in Parliament which was strongly in favour of constitutional monarchy, but very opposed to, very much, very much in favour of constitutional monarchy, and greatly opposed to the Exclusion Bill, which was being mounted by the tradespeople who were forming the early days of the Whig faction. The Exclusion Bill was intended to keep James II off the throne, because the future James II, I'm getting this terribly messed up, James, Duke of York, younger brother of Charles II, had converted to Catholicism during the Protectorate, so he was the heir to the throne, because Charles was producing lots of illegitimate children, but no actual proper royal offspring. So James looked very much as if he was going to become King of England, and Parliament, the Whigs wanted to get a bill through Parliament excluding him, because on the grounds of being a Catholic and saying he couldn't be the King of England. The Tories opposed this successfully. James did become the King of England. The Whigs worked together with various foreign factions to bring over Charles's younger sister Mary and her husband William to replace James in what's known as the Glorious Revolution of 1688. The Tories then essentially were dissidents. The Tories were the faction who supported the Jacobites, who supported the idea of bringing back King James and his various successors, supported the 1715 rebellion, supported the 1745 rebellion, and after the failure of that, kind of like more or less went dormant for a bit. So by 1750, the 1750s, you've got a tiny Tory faction which has no real power in Parliament, no great political clout or anything, but it did kick up a fuss about the calendar, because in the course of making the adjustment from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, it was necessary to remove 12 days from the calendar. The Julian calendar was, let me get this right, 12 days behind the Gregorian calendar. So as you'll see if you look at the picture on the top of this, for September 1752, there was a gap. It went straight from the 3rd of September to the 14th of September. The Tories complained massively about this, and in fact whipped up this notion that there were riots going on across the country. When I was a kid, and this was taken as standard history, it was one of those stories that you were taught in children's history books about how in 1752 there were riots all across the country with people shouting, "Give us back our 11 days," and believing that, you know, their lives were going to be 11 days shorter because the calendar had skipped 11 days. In actual fact, this was a complete myth, more or less stirred up by the Tories to foment all kinds of discord and disagreement with the Whigs. And that's really it for the calendar. So where are we at here? People are being quiet. I'm stumbling away. I've bumbled that one considerably. I'll talk a bit more about Tories and the Whigs in a moment. What else happened in 2020 that was good? Well, there's this. I finally, after so many years of playing recorder, I decided I was going to, for heaven's sake, comfort buying, I was going to buy at least one or two decent recorders. And I found this in the sale catalogue for the Early Music Shop. It's a Rosewood treble recorder made probably in 1939 by a gentleman named Robert Goebel. Goebel was had been an assistant for the Dolmetsch family, who dominated recorder production in England in the 20th century. If you played a black plastic recorder in school in the 1960s, it would have been a Dolmetsch. They absolutely had the market sewn up. Goebel left the Dolmetsch organisation in 38-39, set up on his own, making recorders, also making furniture, and beginning to work on what he really wanted to do, which was build harpsichords. The harpsichord being the Baroque keyboard instrument, it's not like a piano. A piano is a percussive instrument. A harpsichord is more like a guitar or a lute. It's a plucked instrument with quills plucking the strings rather than the hammer of a piano hammering on the strings. So a plucked instrument, not a percussive one. A lot of Baroque music was written for harpsichord, much of Bach's music, for example. But there weren't many around. People were beginning to revive the harpsichord in the middle of the 20th century, and Goebel, who was married to a harpsichordist, set about building harpsichords. Moved to Oxford after the war, built up a harpsichord manufacturing company, and was one of the few people building harpsichords. I've not been able to find any evidence, but there's a very good chance that it was a Goebel harpsichord that the EMI had at Abbey Road, and consequently which you will hear on things like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and Fixing a Hole and all kinds. It became tied up with psychedelic sound for a few years there. But then it all settled down. In the early 70s, you got the idea of historically informed performance, HIP, as it is still known to this day, which basically said that old music, Baroque music, should be played in the way that it would have sounded at the time when it was composed. So Goebel, who'd been experimenting with harpsichords and making them louder and more flexible, was forced back into building replicas of 18th century instruments. But he had, before the war and for a few years after the war, he had made recorders, and here's one of them. It's number 862, or is it 4? I can't quite make it out. However, it's relatively early, and it's a lovely piece, and it's just nice to have a nice recorder. And this is a fine recorder, a Yamaha plastic job, very good copy of a Denner 18th century recorder. It's a fine instrument, but there's just something about having a nice rosewood instrument. So I'll play it for you on a song which has absolutely nothing to do with recorders, but what the heck, I think it'll sound nice. Where have I got it? Here we go. There you go, time after time. Cyndi Lauper with a few phrases nicked from Miles Davis there, and all played on the totally authentic, that well-known 1980s instrument, the wooden treble recorder, which is something that I've just really enjoyed in the course of 2020. A lovely thing to play. The Miles version of this always makes you feel down. Try listening to the bootlegs, Rupert. There's lots and lots of live versions where he really kicked it much more effectively, in fact, than he did on the studio version. Debbie, this is the main song on the soundtrack of a film. Okay, which film is that? Me and films after about 1980 are kind of living on different planets. So do tell me at some point. Might be worth looking at. Right, okay. Time's moving satisfactorily along, I think. Yeah, Hugh. Okay. Okay. Hugh, the way you play guitar, it's a percussion instrument. I don't know. I don't agree with that, really, mate. I mean, you play lots of chords and it all works very effectively. I suppose one could argue that rhythm guitar is a percussion instrument, but there's still this distinct difference between the harpsichord with its quills plucking at the strings and the piano with its pads hammering down on the strings. Hammer down. Somehow I'm reminded that they might be giants there, but I'm not going to go into that right now. We're okay. Tories and Whigs, carrying on about Tories and Whigs, because how does this all turn into the British political party system? You get a tendency, by the late 18th century, you still haven't got any parties, you've still got all these factions, but you've got a distinction now between a group of people who are essentially associated with the gentry, and with the Church of England and with the Scottish Covenanters, the Scottish churches, and who are greatly opposed to the revolutionary radicalism of the era. They're opposed to the revolution in America. They're very strongly opposed to the French Revolution. And on the other side, you have the Whig faction, which is still largely politically in control, but beginning to give way, especially after the French Revolution, which frightened a great deal of people in England. And the Whigs are still in favour of trade and aligned more with the non-conformist churches in England, and to a degree accepting of radicalism, of revolution and of change. And this persists through into the 19th century, right through to the 1830s, at which point the Tory tendency. Trevor! Hi there, mate. Arriving late, but not too late. It's all good. The Tories, what we now refer to, what history books tend to refer to as the Tory faction, even up through the Napoleonic Wars into the 1820s, they're still making frequent statements saying, we are not Tories. We are independent Whigs. We are not a different kind of faction. This all changes under Robert Peel in the 1830s, and then they settle down into the Tory party and the Whigs, which become Anne. Hi there. Terribly sorry, I did Mrs. Culper. It's all Mrs. Culper's fault. Okay, blame Mrs. Culper. Definitely her fault. I'm sorry, Anne. I did put notification up. I hoped you'd seen it, but Mayor. Okay, that's fine. Mayor Culper. It's her fault as well. And it settled down into an argument in the 1830s, largely between the party that wants to be protectionist, and that's the Tories, and the party that is in favour of free trade, and that's the Whigs, which becomes the Liberal Party. I liked Mrs. Culper as well. I'm reminded of a letter that I'll try and pull this one together. I did sort a letter in my letter sorting days about 10 or 11 years ago, working in a factory. And there was a letter to somebody with a name like Mrs. Fuckwood. Seriously, it was printed quite straight on the envelope, and you go, what? changed their name. But Mrs. Culper, yeah, oh yes, Mrs. Culper, or an Agatha Christie for that matter. Although, perfectly honest, I'd rather read G.K. Chesterton than Agatha Christie. So yeah, it all settled down in the 1830s, 1840s into the protectionist Tories and the Free Trade Liberal Party, from which politics proceeds into the 20th century. So there's a very chaotic account from the Restoration through to the middle of the 19th century of the Tories and the Whigs and the slow development of different factions and different interests into political parties. You see, Anne, I always switch off predictive text. It can't guess what I'm going to say. It just drives me completely nuts and tries to change every word I use, because I use all these long words that nobody else uses. Right, okay, Tories and Whigs, that was it. Other good things that have happened in the course of the year. Well, one of the good things that's happened in the course of the year, really, for me, and I hope for the rest of you as well, has been doing these streams. And doing the little recordings. I don't know if anybody ever looks at them. It doesn't really matter. It's part of keeping myself together that I record a song every day, as far as possible every day, and put it up on YouTube, just to keep things going along. Auto-incorrect is much more like it. Thank you, Pete. I'd like to keep, it's all part of keeping me going. And these streams, doing these fortnightly streams, of course, the first one was on my birthday. It was a substitute for being able to do a proper birthday party because the pubs were closed, couldn't do it. And then it carried on, and here we are. And I've skipped a week now, in keeping with skipping 11 days in the calendar in 1752. And it's now skipped. The next one will be a fortnight today, and we'll carry on with it. I'm carrying on with it because it's great. It's something to focus on around. It's something to put ideas together for. For me, in any case, it's all very productive and fantastic, and thank you all for being here, and I hope you've enjoyed them as well. It has been a good part of what's going on, and something that would not have happened had circumstances not been what they were. So, I don't want to say hooray for COVID-19, but here I am. I can do no other, as somebody famous once said. Right, getting towards 9 o'clock, let's see about another piece of music. Not that far, what can we get here? Okay, let's try something that I haven't even tried practicing playing, so I'll do it on the recorder because I'm more likely to get it right on that one. Or I'll try and sing it. Actually, I'll try and sing it. Yet another song vaguely related to time. That's the theme for the songs today. Let's give this a go. Oh, it's quiet. Thank you for the days, those endless days, those sacred days you gave me. I'm thinking of the days I won't forget a single day, believe me. I bless the light, I bless the light that lights on you, believe me. And though you're gone, you're with me every single day, believe me. Days I'll remember all my life, days when you can't see wrong from right. You took my life, but then I knew that very soon you'd leave me. But it's alright, now I'm not frightened of this world, believe me. I wish today could be tomorrow. The night is dark, it does bring sorrow anyway. Thank you for the days, those endless days, those sacred days you gave me. I'm thinking of the days. I won't forget a single day, believe me. Days I'll remember all my life. Days when you can't see wrong from right. You took my life, but then I knew that very soon you'd leave me. But it's alright, now I'm not frightened of this world, believe me. Days, thank you for the days. Those endless days, those sacred days you gave me. I'm thinking of the days. I won't forget a single day, believe me. I bless the light. I bless the light that shines on you, believe me. And though you're gone, you're with me every single day, believe me. Thank you, Ray Davies, wonderful songwriter, one of the great British songwriters. A nice little tune there. Oh, one of Rupert's favourite marathon tunes. Johnsy, yes, Johnsy died a few years ago, didn't he, Hugh? Yes, remember him well from gigs at the Barrel. Great pub for a gig. It's basically surrounded by fields with horses in, so you can do all kinds of things. Thanks, guys. I quite enjoyed that myself. That's 2 songs I've sung this week. I'm running out of liquid. I might have to go and do a quick refill fairly shortly. So yeah, things that have happened this year. Well, there was Christmas, and something I missed out from Christmas was Santa Duck. Santa Duck was heavily billed for the Christmas thread, and completely failed to make an appearance. So here he is, passing through on the way to next December. Everybody say goodbye, Santa Duck. We will see him again in 12 months' time, if I'm still doing these things in 12 months' time. Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Boris Johnson doesn't know. I don't know either. Right. Yes, more music, because I've essentially run out of things to talk about. Yeah, my list of nice things that has happened in 2020 isn't really that extensively long. A nice recorder, the Dewberry. The Dewberry was a tremendous event. I played that earlier for those who arrived later. There we go. Oh, I would have got my fingers. There we are. Someday I'm going to have to pursue more of this because I'm really in love with these wind cap instruments and their little buzzy, cute little buzzy sound. So yeah, 2020, not the best of years, but lots of fun stuff, lots of fun instruments for me anyway, lots of enjoyment doing these streams, and lots of enjoyment having you here. So thanks everybody for being here. Getting very close to the end now, and definitely running out of steam. What else have I got to play? Okay, here's a bit of a classic. Do you know what? I'm going to go and play. Do you know what? I'm going to play something that I've never done this. I'll give in. Let's call it officially the end of 2020, and we'll move on from here. I've got plenty of time to prepare because there's a massive long intro on this song. And I have to say, it doesn't sound very much like the original at all, but you'll all know it, I'm sure. Well, most of you, yeah, I'm sure every one of you will know this thing. And I haven't done anything by this particular band all year, so here we go. after the usual 10-minute break. Ricky and Chris, if you want to turn off right now, then please feel free. I don't know whether to dismiss this as a really feeble attempt to play the song or to applaud it for doing something different with it and not actually trying to sound that much like the original. I don't know what their motivation was. But it's the only version that I can find. There aren't that many, oddly enough, apart from once you get away from the big hits, there aren't that many versions of Pink Floyd songs available as karaoke. And this is the only one that I can find of this, so we're going with it. Don't know what they did with the chords on that last bit of the Breathe and Freeze there. I'll have to go back and listen to that, but it all sounded terribly wrong to me. But then again, I suppose I've been rather exposed to this music. How's everybody doing out there? Skipped a week. We want our week back, absolutely. Yes, you won't get it back unless I do another one next week, which maybe I won't. Okay. What have we got here? Yes, I don't know how you make the little icons appear during the tune either. Trevor, yay! Is that a faster tempo? It's probably a faster tempo, Rupert. It's a karaoke track. I'm sure they speeded it up because Pink Floyd is actually slower than people tend to think it is. Yeah, I have no idea how you get those little hearts and flowers and things either. Great Gig on the Sky. I've done Great Gig before, Pete. You might not have been here for that one. I did it sometime back in the summer, and in fact, it's my standard Floyd piece when people say play some Pink Floyd, and I say, well, you know, money. It's a 16-bar solo. There's nothing else to play. Us and Them. It's a song with saxophone decorations and a solo in the middle. It's not really anything. So I do. So I've worked out Great Gig in the Sky, and it does fit very nicely on the tenor sax. And if there are enough requests, I can whip that one out at some point in the future. It has been done, but hey, there's absolutely no reason why we can't do repeats. I'm sure I repeat myself frequently. Right, okay, well, 3 minutes past 9. As always, I'm overrunning slightly, and I've got a few more bits of music here, I think. What else have I got? I have just one more song, so we'll give that a go, and then I'll call it a day and go and see about having some tea, which probably doesn't involve eggs, because after eating a dozen eggs in the course of the last week, I'm absolutely egged out, or possibly egged off. And I'm leaving eggy smells all over the place, which you don't want to know about. I don't want to know about. It's time to eat something else instead. I'll go and see what I've got in the freezer. But first, a final song. Maybe a bit of saxophone again. Time Is On My Side by the Rolling Stones. And, well, that's it. Time isn't going to be on our side any longer because we've reached after 9 o'clock, and I'm going to call it a day. Go and get myself something more to drink. Probably not booze. I wonder if the booze was responsible for my being sick, because I hadn't drunk anything for ages and ages, and then I made my way through most of a bottle of brandy during the course of Christmas week, and then I got ill. There may be a bit of a cause and effect thing going on there, so I'll take it easy on the booze. Right, okay. Do you know, Rupert, so many time songs that I could have done, and I picked some fairly obvious ones. But there we go. Anyway, guys, lovely to see you here. Thank you for being here, everyone. I hope you had a good evening. I hope I haven't been entirely Emma Thomas, absolutely, Andy. Although, as Hugh said, I too grew up with the Stones version on my copy of High Tide and Green Grass. Big hits. Yep, that's it. I hope it hasn't been too incoherent. Thoroughly enjoyed doing it. We will do this again. I don't think I'm going to do it next week, so you're not going to get your 7 days back. It'll be in a fortnight's time. And, yep, take care until then. Let's hope that Johnson sort of comes up with some ideas that are even halfway sensible and doable. As I said on a Facebook comment, well, two things to say about that before I go away. As I said on a Facebook comment, Johnson said he's not going to do a curfew, so it's only a matter of time. But this government being what they are, it'll probably be a curfew between midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, which will be extremely effective. And to finish with, a point that I saw in The Guardian, and I don't know who wrote it, some below-the-line commentator made a point that I thought was very good and one to think about, which was that during the first lockdown, back in April and May, all the shops were shut, except those that were allowed to remain open. By the looks of things, in the current lockdown, all the shops are open, except those that have been told they have to shut. Which may seem like a subtle difference, but it's actually quite a big one, and I think it might explain quite a lot about what's going on right now. But anyway, that's enough of that. I do try to avoid these subjects. Guys, take care. Lovely to see you. Thanks for being here. I'll go and get it up on YouTube. See you next time.